That's brilliant. So we're away. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the 5 steps to getting clients to buy from you. I'm Carole Bozkurt of the Blueprint Practice, and with me tonight is
Anne-Marie MAYLING, the business super nanny. Yay!
Yay! And we're really delighted that you're here today, and we're really looking forward to sharing our insights and tips into the 5 steps. So I just checked with everyone that they can hear okay. Just wanted to say that, I'm sure that you're used to using GoToWebinar, but if you need to raise your hand at all, just press the hand if there's a problem, and then we will come to you. So just to kick, great, the slides were working as well. So just to kick this off, did you know that only 2% of business owners close the deal in their first meeting? And research has indicated that it takes anything between 7 and 14 interactions for a client to decide if they want to buy from you. But here's the real kicker. 82% of people do not follow up after the first meeting. Can you believe that? 82%? That's such a huge number. And actually what it means is that there is a terrific amount of money being left on the table. So I just wonder, with everyone on this call this evening, if you've ever found yourself in that situation where you're not following up after your first interaction, and potentially allowing that opportunity to slip through your fingers. So could I just ask you to put yes into the chat box, or no, if you've ever found yourself in that situation. I'm not going to call out anyone's name, so you'll be perfectly okay. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to do that. Okay, so I can see we've got some yeses coming in, but we do have one no, which is brilliant. Well, today what we're going to do is we're going to explain why you might have found yourself in that situation and how you can overcome it. And for some of you, this actually might be quite surprising. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of our presentation here, I just thought we would go through our agenda for our webinar today. So first of all, we were going to tell you a little bit about ourselves. So Anne's going to kick that off, and then I'll tell you a little bit about myself. And then we're going to tell you why the brain interferes with your selling capability. And then we're going to take you through our 5 steps of getting you to buy. So the first step is around creating opportunity. The second step is around features, benefits, and so much more. Then we're going to have a look at buying strategies. And then we just wanted to tell you about a masterclass we are running on the 20th of June, which is focusing on selling. So I hope that's okay with everyone on the call. We'll just take a few moments of your time for that. And then we'll go on to step number 4, handling objections. And finally, step number 5, how to make it easy for your client to commit. So Anne, over to you.
Oh, right, Carole, I don't know if it's just me, but the slides haven't moved on.
Oh.
So I'm still just looking at the title slide. It might just be me. So apologies to anyone else if they're already, there.
Let me just ask everyone. I don't know why that...
Don't you just love it when the technology does this?
Yeah, yeah. So can I just ask everyone on the call, are you seeing just the first slide, or can you see Anne's slide where she's going to talk about herself? I just want to find out. Thank you for pulling that to my attention, Anne, because I don't want everyone just seeing the first slide. Show my screen.
Yay!
Okay, everyone, right. I actually hadn't pressed the button that says show my screen. Just a little hiccup.
Just
Okay.
a little hiccup. Isn't it a great way to spend a Friday evening?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So,
well done,
hi
Anne.
everybody. My name's Anne-Marie Mayling. Now, you might be looking at the photograph, and if we've met each other elsewhere, I might have been calling myself Anne Rennie. I am in fact both, but Anne-Marie Mayling is my married name, so I've now moved to start using that. So apologies for any confusion that may be caused. And of course, if you've never met me at all, that doesn't mean anything to you, so I'll just move on. So my background, sales and service leadership roles. I've worked with lots of big brands, one of which you'll probably know, i.e. Carlsberg. And it's always been a real passion of mine as to what it is that triggers that decision to buy, and to trade with someone in particular. And I've done that really for all of my working life. I've also led major projects about looking at customer experience for business to business, and lots of business improvement work as well. But about 4 years ago, I moved into the sphere of working with smaller business owners, looking at how we can define, design, and implement solutions, and sometimes some of the learnings from bigger businesses into how they run their businesses, but making sure that we're staying aligned with lifestyle and values. Now, in doing that, I've gone away and done what I'm sure all of you have done, which is lots of study, lots of digging around and all the juicy stuff that's out there. So I've got a postgraduate diploma in sales and retail management, project management qualifications, and I've done all of the NLP, hypnotherapy, and so on, as well as gaining my certificate in coaching. So I'm really interested in making sure we're doing the right thing, but I'm also fascinated by why we aren't already doing it and how we can make the shift into doing it. And tonight I'm going to be able to share with you some of the things that I've noticed and some of the observations that I've had in my career so far. And now, Carole, over to you.
Thank you, Anne. Sorry for laughing, everyone. It's the slides. I always have difficulty with the slides. Anyway, so this is me. I know some of you on the call know me, but I left the corporate world in 2011 to start up on my own. And I've got 20 plus years in sales and marketing, and I've mainly worked on service brands, big service brands. So in my last corporate role, I worked for the largest actuarial consultancy in the world, where I headed up marketing for Europe. And before that, I worked for a company that pioneered executive coaching in the UK. And our clients, we coached 23% of the FTSE 100 at main board level and 56% at subsidiary board level. And we actually coached the top 8 at main board level of the FTSE 100. And before that, I worked in IT. Now, my focus has always been on increasing the visibility of the company that I've worked for, but also the individual. And this was especially important when I worked for the coaches, as each coach was seen as a profit and loss center, and they had to generate revenue. So selling has played an incredibly important role in the services that I deliver to my internal clients. And I don't know if we've got any coaches on the call tonight, but the coaches that I worked with really didn't like selling. In fact, they would do anything to avoid it. So I had to work with them to help them realize that the type of selling we were doing was not pushy or manipulative or aggressive, but it could be the type of selling that allowed them to demonstrate their expertise, their knowledge, and also to show their personality, an approach that was more in alignment with how they prefer to interact with their potential clients, as opposed to this vision they had of, you know, like a pushy car salesman. Not that car salesmen are pushy today at all, but, you know, there's that vision. So we're going to start off with the brain. Now, scientists tell us that decision-making relies on 2 separate networks in the prefrontal cortex of our brains, so at the front of our brains. And one network enables us to determine the overall value of a potential outcome and balance it against the risks, while the other network, which is around cognitive control, keeps us in check and gives us a better chance of attaining that goal we're aiming for. So one network of our brain is saying, what are the risks involved? And the other network in our brain is saying, here's your goal, are you achieving it? So this is the interesting thing about the brain. It wants to protect us. Its job is to protect us. And this might surprise you, but one of the things it wants to protect us against is the potential for rejection. So when something comes up like a sales meeting with a potential client, our brain focuses on the potential for being rejected because our brain equates rejection with high risk. And the reason that rejection triggers a pathway that's actually is activated when we experience physical pain. So the brain quickly weighs up in any given situation what the risks are and decides if it's worth taking. And I've just done a little equation. So the brain wants to avoid pain at all costs because its job is to protect us. So rejection plus risk to our brain equates to physical pain. So if our brain believes that we are taking a risk and it becomes overwhelming, we subconsciously think to ourselves, how can I get myself out of here? And the thought of rejection can cause sufficient anxiety for us to want to avoid the situation. And the more we become anxious, the more we want to avoid it, and so we get that vicious circle. So can you see where we're going with this? Yes. So if you are attending a sales meeting and you're not 100% sure that the person you just met is going to buy your services or products, on a subconscious level, anxiety starts building, and then that fear of rejection kicks in. And the fact is that some of us are more sensitive to it than others. So the thought of rejection actually stops us from selling because our subconscious is telling us that if we get rejected, we are going to experience physical pain. And as I said at the beginning, the reason that you are not selling might surprise you because the probability, it's not that you're not technically a good salesperson, but it's the subconscious running the fear of rejection program that stops you from following up with that client. So how can we figure out, how can we sort of like fight that urge to run away and hide? And I just wonder if anyone on the call has got any suggestions at all. So why don't you just type maybe what you think you might be able to do to stop that urge of, running away. And when we're looking at sales, the run away and hide bit is not following up with that sales meeting. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds just to type in maybe some thoughts. We'd really like to be able to share those with you, with everyone on the call. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to type something in, and I'll just take some water. Okay, so what have we got here? Right, so go for the relationship development rather than selling directly. That's fantastic. That's from Claudia. That's really great, Claudia. Has anybody else got any comments they'd like to share? Let's just have a look. Okay, well maybe we'll get some as we go along. So let's start to have a look at our steps. Let's go on to step 1, the opportunity. So firstly, you have to understand what you bring to the table. And I really can't stress this enough because so often it's overlooked. You know, what are your strengths, your wisdom, your expertise and capability that makes you unique? You have to be clear on that so that you can convey it to your client with confidence. Try to get to know your client before you meet them. You know, do your homework, review their website, have a look at what they're doing on social media, read their LinkedIn profile. You know, write down the questions that you would like to ask to get a fuller picture of your client, their business and their market. You know, it's that be prepared motto. And also find out what your ideal client is struggling with. You know, perhaps ask people who are in the same field what are their difficulties. You know, check out on the internet. And of course, when you meet them, you can ask them what their challenges are. But the one thing I just want to highlight is to remember that their problems are not just related to the services or products that you're offering. You know, their challenges could start the moment they wake up. They might not have anything to do with what you're offering, but you need to understand the complexity of your life so that when you're having that one-to-one conversation, when they're sitting across the table from you, you're actually having a more informed conversation because you know where they're coming from and they will pick up on that. So an important part of creating your opportunity to get to know your client is to create your client avatar. And I'm sure that everyone on this call has heard or has done a client avatar. But what I just want to highlight is don't let it become a tick box exercise. You know, firstly, make sure you do the exercise and don't just carry the information around in your head, get it down onto paper or in electronic format. And secondly, make sure you really know who your ideal client is. You know, knowing that they are female or male in their 40s, a homeowner is okay, but that's at quite a superficial level. It's still really interesting to know, but we would like you to dig deeper. You know, what are their hopes and fears, their core values, their attitudes and beliefs, their emotional state? You know, do you really know how they spend their free time? And thirdly, once you are clear about your client avatar, coupled with the strengths and expertise and your uniqueness that you bring to the table, you can then begin to shape your sales and marketing material. And armed with this information, you can take that through the whole of your marketing activity. So it's not just about your client avatar, but it's actually also about you and it's about your uniqueness. And then the next stage, once you've had those conversations with your clients, or you've had the initial conversation with your client, it's all about qualifying your lead so that you're investing your time wisely. So what you need to do is to create a process to help you evaluate the potential of that lead. So for example, after your first discussion, you know, is your contact a potential client? Or are they an influencer or a connector? You know, influencers and connectors, these people become your unpaid sales force. They're the people who will recommend and drive people towards you. If they are a potential client, you know, do they have a budget? Are they already working with somebody, or perhaps they're looking to work with somebody now or maybe within the next 6 months? And is your service or your product fit for purpose? Is it a reasonable fit, or is it a fit that will add value? So once you've created your process to help you evaluate your potential lead, you actually then know where to focus your time and effort. And now we're going to have a look at the benefits. So over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Carole. And you're very kindly going to drive my slides
I
for me,
am.
so.
I'm going to drive your slides.
You.
So if you need anything, just say next slide. I will try and keep up.
Creating compelling conversations. Now, here's the thing. we've spoken about the ideal client, we've spoken about leads. What we're speaking about now are people, people like us. And in among our potential clients, there are a wide range of different people. And for some of them, decision making can be really quick. Others, they really struggle to get to that point of making the decision, never mind what the decision is. And often that can have nothing to do with either the value or the significance of the purchase that they're making. You know, we've probably all know somebody that took longer to buy a pair of shoes than to buy a house. So how do we decide what clinches it? And that's what we're going to build through this presentation to take you to. But underpinning all of it, it's really simple. Make it easy to buy. And here we're talking about how we start to address that feeling of risk. We're starting to stack the benefit so that it becomes so compelling our clients make it easy for them to say yes. That's where we're headed. So you want to share everything with them that they need to know, but in a way that connects with them at the deepest possible level. So how do we start doing that? Ooh. Well, we're going to be looking at taking it away from features and function. And features and functions are things that describe what it is, how it works. Or, you know, often if you'll speak with a coach and they talk about the process that they use, they talk about the tools and techniques, but they don't then move on to tell us why that matters. And also why they are the right person for us. And just a little while ago, I love the phrase, I wrote it down that Carole used. She talked about your strength, your wisdom, your capability. And it's making it very clear what benefit that brings. You're answering these questions for them all the way through. And if you're in any doubt, benefits are what make us buy. It's what matters to us the most. And if it's what matters to us the most, then it surely is what matters to our clients the most. And I believe that's what will tip the risk towards reward balance, towards saying yes. Now, a benefit, let's be clear, can be about removing something negative. And it can be about adding something positive. Now, I actually believe everybody on the call has layers and layers of benefit that they bring. And what we must do to serve our clients is to help them see that value. So how do we do that? Next slide, please. Well, we talk to them about the benefits. That's what we're talking about most of the time. That's what most of our conversations are structured around. And of course, we're asking them questions, we're listening, and we're selecting those benefits that they are likely to value most. We're going to be able to be really specific. We're going to make sure that we know what the real key benefits are across our customer base and what they are for the person we're talking to right there. And of course, how much value they place on them. We're really trying to get to the point where it seems more risky for them not to act than to act. And they're telling us that all the way through the conversation. And we just start to stack those benefits and demonstrate that value time and time again. Now, what we're looking at doing is building up this series of core benefit statements. So you will have lots of things in there that you know immediately that you can say. What I'm asking you to do is to ensure that within that, you really have emotional and value-driven statements there, as well as perhaps some of the more tangible and observable benefits that you've been talking about up to now. Now, there are specific consequences and outcomes that come from your product, your service, and also the experience you create. But earlier, as Carole said, they aren't just what is in front of you there. Their lives are much richer, much broader, and their challenges go out across the whole of their lives. Are the benefits that you bring that will create that ripple across their friends, across their family? Will it go into other areas of their life and, almost as an added bonus, help them with other challenges that they hadn't even thought of? We can only really understand them at the level we need to when we look through the customer's eyes. And I really believe that these are the kinds of conversations that we have with customers, with clients, as we're working with them and after we've finished working with them. By asking them to comment, they're helping us develop our understanding of them and of how we can better serve the next customer who comes. Next slide, please. Now, Carole's already spoken about the ideal customer profile and how important it is to go beyond the demographics. It is about thinking about styles and preferences, core beliefs and values, and one in particular, what is the emotional state they are experiencing before they begin working with you, during the process of working with you, and after working with you. That is something, you can describe it, can create the real momentum for them to want to start that journey with you. So by talking to your potential customer about the benefits of choosing you in this way, they will almost think as if you're reading in their mind. You will be demonstrating to them that you don't just get the problem, you get them. So, can you build the pain and explain the gain already? Let's have a look at some things that you could do. Let's start with the pain. It's always a good place to start, isn't it? Is there an obvious problem you solve? Now, there probably is. But my belief is that all of you actually are solving more problems, and these will be more subtle and probably multi-layered. And again, it's this ripple effect, because what the client is describing to you is one aspect of his experience. And perhaps in working with you and removing that aspect, more and more areas of his life will be improved. So it could be simple. You could be able to say, there's discomfort, there's inconvenience, there's frustration. You're going to remove all of that for them, or you're going to reduce them. Do you also, as a result, improve the life of those around them? Are they looking for something new? Are they looking for you to help them find their energy to move on? What are the words your customer is using to you? How are they describing themselves? Now, in working with many people, they begin being very articulate about what they don't want, but actually they're struggling to be able to articulate what they want instead. Your skill in having these conversations is beginning to create bridges between what they're having now and what they're going to experience after they've worked with you. You can start to build those layers. What are the negative implications of holding on to the problem? What are the consequences? What's actually happening, or what do they think might happen for them and those around them if they don't do something? Get into their world as much as you can. You really want to be looking out through their eyes, hearing with their ears, and experiencing for yourself where they are in their minds. And the more the contrast can be made, the more compelling it is for them to make a decision. So here we want to start painting for them the pain-free zone. What's it going to be like after they've worked for you? What are the benefits they're going to feel when they come out the other side? Now, everything we're telling the customer is true, because you've already had customers who've had these experiences. And on the surface, the kinds of things that you may be able to point to are, you've saved them time, you've saved them or made them money, you've removed frustration. Now, But I want you to really dig deeper. Having got that time, money, or that freedom from frustration, what are they going to do with it? What is it they're going to have in their lives instead? So if you're saving somebody, I don't know, an hour a day, what are they going to do with that 7 hours a week? Is it actually the real benefit that they're going to be able to spend more time with their children? That they're going to be able to go and do an activity that they really love and get joy from? So the benefit is the joy that they feel, is the spending time with their children and feeling less guilty. That's the level that we want to get to. What is it that you're creating in their experience that they don't have now? And if it is something you're removing, then you can flip it and start talking about it in the positive. So if you're removing complexity, then actually what you're doing is creating simplicity. In bringing costs under control, ultimately we're increasing profits. Point them from the pain to the positive, and home in both the tangible and intangible aspects. And the more of a contrast you can make, the more they want the future. They want what they can have with you. And now I'm going to move on to the next area. Purpose. Research suggests that it's not about just avoiding pain or seeking pleasure. Actually, what is fundamental to us as human beings is personal growth and purpose. That's what makes us truly happy. So make sure that if you have clients who are talking to you about things like clarity and having focus, that you home in on it. These are really powerful benefits. These are things that go right to the heart of it. So are people telling you they feel transformed? Do they, are they using words like, oh, I'm really back on track. Oh, I feel really inspired and really energized. Make sure that you home in on these and find ways of talking about them that make them live for the client who's at the start of the process. So what can you do? Next slide, please. Here's an exercise for you to do when you come off the call. Now, you want to write down the features and functions because you want to be able to talk about what you do and how you do it. It's part of the process. And also, not only what it is, but what does it do for your customer or client. And then sit and look at the list. Are the statements that you're writing down just talking to the head, or are they talking to the head and the heart? Because we'd love to think we're all logical creatures, but the truth is our heart plays a big part in the decision-making process. And then be honest, is that list compelling enough to motivate you to say yes? Is it? If not, dig deeper. I want you to say it out loud. I want you to deliver it. Listen to the language, listen to the tone. Do you sound excited? Do you sound really excited about what it is you're going to offer? Because if you don't, then you're not there yet. Now, this is not a checklist that you're going to just take every customer through and make sure that you go from benefit 1 to benefit 365. You're going to be selective. And through your conversations and your relationship building with the client, you're going to identify the key benefit, the area that's really important to that individual. And ask them. Now, when we were having a discussion around this and talking about how we explode the benefits all the way out, we came up with this pyramid. And one of the ways that we used it was looking at whether the products and services that we offered actually have benefits in all of these areas. Now, quality, convenience are now just givens. They're not benefits that are going to seal the deal. But if they're not there, you're going to lose it. So really much of the things that we may have talked about before have become hygiene factors. So where is it on this pyramid that your client looks to be motivated to say yes and to jump to that decision? If it's fulfilled for them, the risk disappears and they're ready to go. So just to sum up, talk about the benefits, and you're talking to the person about their deepest feelings, values, and what matters to them above all others. And then you'll be heard, because not everyone is doing this and having these quality of conversations. Many people are still having the conversation at the level of features and function. Be very specific about what the key benefits are. When they tell you what they don't want, get clear in your mind what it is they want instead and what it is they really value. Keep building that series of core benefit statements, making sure that you've got that balance between the head and the heart all the way through. Do talk about the consequences, specific outcomes that they can expect. But here's the thing. You could only understand the benefits at the deepest level when you look through the customer's eyes. And of course, have conversations with them about those benefits. They can help you take this to the next level by just sharing their experience with you in a different way. So now we're going to move on to step 3. And in step 3, I'm going to introduce you to buying strategies. Now, this is a big topic, so in this section, we're going to get you thinking about it and just make you aware of why it's important to be thinking about this. Our buying strategy is the way we make the decision. It's the process that we go through. It's the how. It's how what you see as an objection may have arisen. So sometimes we begin to hear the objection, and actually what's really running is my buying strategy. Also, a buying strategy, when it's balanced, will have both cognitive and emotional aspects. So we want to move them to where they can make a decision. And we do that by working with the buying strategy. Next slide, please. So we said in step 2 it was about it being easy to buy. So we're going to look at these strategies because, again, it connects you with your client in a way that not everyone is connecting. So you're going to be heard in a very different way and perceived in a very different way. And your conversation is going to take a step out and a step on from what they're getting from everybody else. So the number one error we can make when we have a selling conversation. And also, just watch out, just for fun, see if you recognize how you buy. And I'm going to share with you how I do it in just a second. So when you look in the textbooks, it'll come up with something like this. You know, they usually have sort of 4 or 5 blocks to take us through the process. And this is lovely. And I'm sure it's absolutely true, but it's only half the story. The thing is here, if you read this, it implies that it's simply a cognitive process. If all we do is address that side of it, we're missing most of what's going on for most people. And then the next bit. Slide, please. Thank you. We talk about high involvement versus low involvement. So often that's about the complexity of the purchase, or the price of the purchase, or the significance of the purchase. It's, again, not as simple as that. You know, I can happily take longer to buy a handbag than a car because I'm more interested in the handbag. But a lot of this is helpful, but it's incomplete. So let's look at some of the other things that are going on. Ooh, here it comes. Here it comes. Yep, here we go. So if you decide that the way that you're going to take the client through the process of the sale and close it is to adopt the strategy that works for you, the way that you buy, about 75% of the people that you come across are going to switch off, because not everybody buys the way we do. In fact, most people won't buy the way we do. Think about differences in buying strategies. And a strategy is a series of steps that we go through to reach the decision. Think about the difference between someone who's a shopaholic, who just buys, and somebody who's a super scrimper, somebody who cuts out coupons and goes in and is always really enjoying getting a bargain. You've got the list follower, somebody who will go through in a very structured way and will only ever buy it if it's on his list, versus the impulse buyer who just runs around the supermarket and throws everything into the trolley as they go. Now, there may be some of those in among your circle. You might recognize aspects of yourself or aspects of some people that you know. But the thing is, all of those are strategies, and all of those are ways that we will work with our clients. So let me introduce you just briefly to something this is derived from an NLP model, but you'll have come across it because you'll have heard people really giving you clues as to which of these styles or preferences they fall within. Now, there are more than 4, but these are the 4 main ones that people fall within. So visual, I'm sure probably even in the last few days, at some point somebody will have said to you, no, I don't get it, I don't get it. You see, I'm really visual. I need to see it. And someone else will go, well, you know, I'm a kind of a touchy-feely person. So we're sharing that, and we're sharing it with people all the time. What I'm suggesting is that in understanding it, you can help your client move through the process with ease. Now, there are others, but I'm not going to go into them because you're going to hit most people by focusing on these 4. And as you work with people, you'll start to see which they are. If you don't, if you ignore it, or you really go in conflict with it, that's when you'll experience rejection. And we know that picture from Psycho. We don't want to go back to that rejection. So the number 1 mistake is to assume everyone makes their decisions like you do and to sell to them like you buy. Remember that number. That's a pretty compelling number. 75% of people don't. So visual, auditory, digital, and kinesthetic. What does it actually mean? So here's just a really quick run through it. So a visual person, kind of person who loves a brochure, will always want to see images. They will tell you in their language that no, I can't quite see it yet. They must be able to see whatever the product service does for them. Their language seems look for very colourful in there, and you may recognise yourself in there. Auditory, they like to listen to others. They'll tell them a story. Let them know that, yeah, I hear where you're coming from. Use language, they'll use language like, yeah, it sounds like a good deal to me. Auditory digital, AD. These are our list people, not our data people. They are going into the conversation with a set of criteria that you've got to fulfill before they listen to anything else. They're logical, they want to look at the statistics, they love the detail. Now, imagine what happens if you're an auditory digital and you meet the next person, the kinesthetic. The kinesthetic, it's all about feelings. Emotions will be very high on their agenda. If that isn't satisfied for them, these are the people you'll see going around Debenhams stroking jerseys. They're very much tuned into their emotions. Now, just a word of warning. Nobody sits in just one of those. We will have a dominant one, but we will use aspects probably of all of them to create that balance between the cognitive and the emotional. So how do we develop our strategy? What might a strategy look like? So we'll see that on the next slide, please. Thank you. So we develop it over time. We learn a way that works for us. And I mean works for us. It's not necessarily a great strategy, but it's one that works for us. So here's me. I am, hands up, list lady. I've done my research, I've got my list, and I go in and I need to have my list ticked off. But then what will kick in is if I have to see it. I do have to have an emotional connection as well. But before I buy, I'll go back and check my list. Now the beautiful thing about that is if you ticked all the things on my list, so even though perhaps giving me more and more and more and more detail wasn't a particularly great experience, by doing that, I close myself, because once the list's closed, I buy. Now, compare that with somebody who has a less balanced strategy. So the shopaholic, see it, love it, buy it. What you can see there is that there's a cognitive step is missing. So their strategy is not necessarily going to be a useful one for them. So that's just kind of two ends of the spectrum, if you like, two different approaches. Now, the final step. When we get right to the end, right to that point of saying yes or saying no, there's the clincher. The way that we move through to be convinced. Now, maybe we just need more of that dominant, do we need to see it more, be told about it more, or we need to experience it. But it can also be very specific. Now, there are people who, when they say to you, I just need more time, they are simply running their strategy. And remember how right back at the beginning we were saying sometimes our brain kicks in and we see things as rejection. They're not rejecting us, they're just running their strategy. So the more we can get into what their strategy is and being comfortable with going with them as they run it, the easier it is for us to keep following up, to keep asking questions, and to keep the process moving. The second group will have to have the criteria met. So these are the people who, if you're not a detail person, will drive you crazy. Just keep giving them the detail. Eventually everything on the list will be checked off and they will buy. There's the repeater. Repeat and repeat and repeat again. And these are the, now just tell me again. Yeah, I get that. And can you just, they just need to hear it again, to experience it again, to see it again. And the group in here, often it's about 3 times, and then they'll be fine. So here's where you, recognizing it's a strategy, can be very patient and simply allow them to run their strategy and help them do it quickly. There are a group out there who they will never make their minds up. They just always want to keep their options open. So their convincer, you almost have to force it to run for them by telling them it's running out. Scarcity works really well with them because they will always want to keep their options open, but if they see one of those options disappearing, they will come back in. And then you have the optimist. They just love you and they'll go with it. With them, we just want to make sure that they have all the information they need so that when they get the other side of the decision, they're going to be just as happy as they were at the point that they need it. So that's giving you an insight into the strategies. Which are you? Just notice which of those you are and which of those are going to perhaps just wind you up a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. So if you're a convincer, your convincer is you need to be told 3 times and you're talking to somebody who is ready to jump, you're going to talk yourself out of a sale. Now, how can you find out what a client's convincer is? The good news is they'll tell you in the conversation, because when they come out with questions, the types of questions, the types of information they ask for will be coming from that strategy and giving you an indication of what the convincer is. So when you close, you satisfy the convincer need. And in your sales conversation, you've sowed the seeds for all of it. So how does this help you? Well, by knowing there are different styles, there's different language, there's different strategies, you can start to design your marketing and sales to speak to all of them. You can start to use the language of all four. You can select images, list features, talk to them about how it will make them feel. You know, if you're in somewhere where you can provide tasters, samples, it means that you can give a spread of ways of engaging with your client and your customer. That means that you're speaking to everyone. You can also be confident that when you resist follow-up for fear of rejection, that actually they're not rejecting. They just haven't had their convincer strategy satisfied yet. So relax and just enjoy it. So over to Carole now, who's just going to take a moment to tell you about an event that we're running coming up in June, where we're going to be featuring lots of aspects of selling. And she's going to take you through it now.
Thank you
for your time and attention.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Anne. So
My pleasure.
Thank you. So I just wanted to tell everyone about a masterclass that we are running on the 20th of June. And I know some of you on the call this evening have already signed up for it. But I just thought I'd tell you about the ethos of our masterclasses. The reason why we started these was because when I first started working for myself, I noticed that there were quite a few business owners that were in overwhelm. You know, they were feeling quite lost and confused and didn't know where to start. And some of them were also fearful of being out there and getting it wrong. And others, they were just not attracting the opportunities and clients that they wanted. And also what I found was that they were finding it really difficult to communicate the services and products that they offered, and more importantly, the value that they were bringing to the table in a way that attracts the type of clients that actually they want to work with. So what we decided to do was to create the masterclass by bringing together experts in a room for one day to share their knowledge, their tips, their insights, to share with you how they've done it, you know, warts and all. So that actually when people leave, they're really armed with a ton of fantastic, you know, valuable information. They're leaving with tips that they can implement into their business, that they can help to sort of like take it forward, but also as well that they're sort of like better informed, and either it's validating their thinking or it's helping them to actually identify the gaps. And that's how the masterclass was born. So our next masterclass, as I've mentioned, is on the 20th of June, and we're focusing on selling. And as we know, selling is a vital component to creating a successful business. And it really is difficult to grow your business without becoming a competent salesperson. But, you know, when I worked with those coaches, the fact is it's not always an activity that everyone enjoys. So at our event, we're going to show you step by step how you can sell easily and effortlessly. And excuse me, I just wanted to share with you at a high level what we're going to cover in the day. So the first thing we're going to start off with is a presentation from Anne and myself, and that's all around building your tribe. You know, you need to have a community of people to sell to, so you've got to know how to build your tribe. And then we've got the wonderful Carole Stewart from Abounding Solutions, who is a coach, and she's going to be talking about how you can sell with confidence. And then we've got Nikki Bonfanti. Now, I call her my talent dynamics guru, and she's also the person who has very generously given every single masterclass member a free talent dynamics token. And what she's going to do is she's going to explain what your natural selling style is. And she's going to explain that, you know, because we all have a natural selling style, there are certain people who will be attracted easily to us, and actually we find it easy to sell to them. But what we want to make sure is that when we have those conversations, or when we write an email or word in for our website, that actually we're including the other styles. So suddenly we get a much broader and bigger group of people to sell to. And then we've got the amazing Jo James, and she's going to be telling us about how to sell the anti-selling way, and that's going to be a fantastic presentation to finish off before lunch. And once we come back after lunch, Anne and I are going to be taken to the stage again, so we will not be having any wine over lunch, and we're going to be talking to you about the essential sales plan. And we've got some really interesting facts coming up about the sales plan. And then Nikki will be doing the second part of her presentation for the day, and that's, you know, focusing on that inner sales superhero that is just inching to get out. And then we've got the wonderful Oge Okasimo, who's coming over from Paris. Now, Oge just sells high-end programs, and she just knocks them out of the park again and again and again. And she's actually going to share with us how you structure those conversations. And she's also going to tell us about the mistakes she's made. So that's going to be an invaluable element of the day. And then finally, we've got the wonderful Helen Vanderberg, and I'm just so delighted that she'll be speaking to us, because she's going to be talking to you about how you can land a corporate client. And again, if you're a coach, a consultant, or a stylist, or a therapist, you know, knowing how you can go into that corporate world and actually land that deal is really important. So here's the information. You know, we would love you to be there on the day, and I know, as I said, some of you on the call are already attending. We've got an early bird price of £97, but if you are able to book within the next 5 days, you will get access to the day for £67. There's a link there. We will be sending around copies of these slides, a recording of this. So, and as I mentioned, you will get that free Talent Dynamics token when you sign up. Plus, you will also get access to the Facebook group that we've got for the masterclass. And after the day is over, you'll get access to the private cloud that we've got, where all the presentations will be, and a lot more information is going into that as well. So, you know, if you feel that this might be right for you, we would love you to be there on the day. So now we're going to get back into our steps, and I was pressing the button the wrong way because it doesn't seem to be moving forward. Great. You know, whenever you're handling the controls, there's always that panic moment. Are the slides moving forward? So step 4 in our step 5 process is all around objection handling. Now, it goes without saying that when you're with your client, you do need to demonstrate enthusiasm and belief in your services and product. And actually, this really does play an essential role in the sales process. But just remember, if you are doing all the talking, you are likely to lose the sale. And this is why the listening component is so important in selling, is because you're actually listening out for their objections. And objections occur when your client is resisting your offer, and you actually might hear them say things like, I'm not certain, the timing isn't right, or it feels a bit overwhelming. Now, when that happens, a statement that I use, and I know Anne uses as well, is to say something like, I understand you have reservations. Do you mind if I ask what they are? Because the fact is, when you ask that question, it is highly unlikely that your client will say no. So they're going to tell you what their issue is. And then once they've responded to you, ask them, is that the only reason you are unable to move forward? And your aim here is really to get a sense of what your client's sticking points are. And if the client says no to that question, then you need to return to your initial question and continue going through that loop until all the objections are on the table. Now, this actually may take some time to gather all that information, and you actually may not be able to cover everything in that meeting or on that call where perhaps you were hoping that you were actually going to close the call at that stage. But it's actually in your best interest to go through this and really, as I said, get a sense of what their potential sticking points are from their perspective. And as you know, Anne was talking about earlier, just remember that people buy in different ways and over different periods of time. So as I said, if you're going to go to that meeting or you've got that call scheduled and you're hoping to close that deal, you might find yourself in a situation where it's going to take another meeting or it's going to take, another call to help your client get to that conclusion. So, don't be disappointed by that. It's all about just keep going through that process. And now the final step in this process is about making it easy for them to commit, for your client to commit. And the key here is getting your potential client. The key to getting your potential client to commit is to align yourself with your client. And the whole purpose of this is so that your client's barriers will drop. And this is the amazing thing. You do this by allowing your client the permission to have a difference of opinion to you. Your client will feel more comfortable and you won't come across like a pushy salesperson when you allow them to have a different viewpoint. And it just actually takes the pressure off the client. And you can do this by saying something like, I recognize that this might seem like a huge commitment, or I know that I'm asking you to take a leap of faith. Because those statements, they're indicators to your prospective client that you recognize that they have a different perspective. So it's really important to say those statements. And so to inch your sale closer to the close, what you've got to do is to agree a solution to their objections. And again, a great way to do this is by saying something like, if we could find a way to take care of that issue, would you then like to move forward? So an example that I give on this is, let's say you're running a mentoring program, and let's say the mentoring program is £10,000 and your potential client is saying, I just don't have the money to be able to afford that at the moment. Then if you were to come up with a solution maybe where they could make payments over a period of time, that actually might be okay for them. So you're helping them to get to a solution so they could move forward. And if they do say no to this question about you finding the solution, then the probability is that they're hiding additional objections. And unfortunately, what you need to do is go back to the beginning, find out what they are, and go through that process again, go through step 4 and step 5 again. And, just keep in mind that some potential clients are naturally a lot more cautious than others, and they will need to feel really comfortable that the risk that they are about to take is justified. And from your perspective, you might know it's absolutely fine, but it's coming from your client's perspective. So if you work through the stages outlined in the slides, then the ground really has been laid for a smooth progression to close in the deal. You need to have reached a point where you've earned the trust of your potential client. and your client needs to understand exactly what it is you're offering and why it might help them to overcome a particular issue or serve or to serve a purpose from their perspective. And again, as we've mentioned before, it's really important that you come across with clarity and certainty. And this is the amazing thing. Do you know what? That 80% of sales are lost because the business owner fails to ask for the sale. So don't let that be one of your issues. You know, provide certainty and reassurance by sharing positive feedback, stories and testimonials from other delighted clients. And then you actually just need to ask the client for the business. And you could say something along the lines of, you know, how does that feel for you? Does this feel right? And how would you like to proceed? And, you know, just to reiterate that some clients do take much longer and need more time before they can say yes. So just in summary, you know, if you follow the process in these slides, if you remember that your potential client is running through their approach to buying, you know, and just remember that no doesn't mean never, it just means not now. Do your homework, you know, and just kick rejection in the pants. So that's the end of our presentation. So I hope you've all found that informative and you've got some things to take away. As I said, you will be getting a copy of this recording. And now we just like to open up for questions. And I'm just going to leave the masterclass information up there in case anyone wants to write it down. So I'm just trying to get my, just wondered if anyone's got any questions they would like to ask. Great. So Anthony is saying it's a real eye-opener. Thank you, Anthony. That's really good. Is there anything else that anybody would like to ask at all? Let's have a look. I can see that you're all still on and you're engaged. That's great. I just want to give you a few seconds to type it in. And also for me to try and figure out exactly what I've got to push right in the, so I've got a question right from Claudia. Will there be an opportunity to practice at the masterclass? Claudia, do you know what? I'm going to open up so that you can speak. I think what I'll do is I'll just stop the recording.